to thank everybody who came today and who joined us. First of all, I really would like to thank His Excellency Richard Martin Nilsson, who is in charge of the first office of Embassy of Canada in Vilnius, Lithuania, who helped us to organize this seminar. And also would like to thank Dr. Snežana Obradović-Ratković, who agreed to share her ideas and her visions, how it's possible to help for refugee students to adopt in the schools. Personally, herself, she also came to Canada only in 1998, came from Yugoslavia as a teacher, and now she is a research officer and instructor in the Faculty of Education, Brock University in Ontario, Canada. And today she will share her inputs, especially how to welcome the students, how to prepare in the schools to welcome them, and also what kind of challenges teachers are facing when they are meeting students, and other good practices from Canada. So my voice goes for Dr. Snežana Obradović-Ratković.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for being eager to learn more how to support refugee students and how to make your schools and your communities caring and safe. So let me just share my presentation with you. And just a moment, please. So can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it. It's not large one. Yeah, it's good now. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I moved from the slides to the slideshow. So, you know, as you can see in this first slide, you know, the main focus is on being, you know, the main words are safe, caring, and connected schools, because without those elements, we cannot educate. It would be difficult to educate refugee students or any students at all. So that's why this is the focus today. I also need to acknowledge that Brock University is situated on the traditional territory of Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is part of the Upper Canada Treaties and within the land of the Dish with One Spoon, One Pump agreement. Today, this is gathering place is home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging remind us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. So, you know, probably you already know that over actually 1 million refugees have moved across the world since 1980, and you know, came to Canada. There have been mass resettlement initiatives of Vietnamese, Kosovar, Syrians, and Ukrainians, the most recently. And Canada has welcomed refugees and is committed to supporting refugees. In 2018 and 2019, Canada received more refugees than any other country in the world. So this really speaks to Canada's support and commitment to refugee resettlement in this country. After the first wave of Syrian refugees in 2015 to Canada, I came together with some of my colleagues, and actually some of them were my students. And several of them actually were refugees or international students. And we conducted a research that was funded by the government to actually find out what we know about refugee education in Canada. And this research actually was a scoping literature review between 1997 and 2017. And unfortunately, we found only 21 articles that was available focused only on refugee children, because there were many focusing on immigrant children, second language learners, and sometimes, kind of grouping all of these populations together. But we did learn something by reviewing the literature, and that actually refugee children education must be proactive. So this is something that shouldn't happen. Focus on refugee students education should not happen only after we receive refugees. Only when there are waves of refugees, because we can, we have witnessing that these waves are ongoing. So our thinking about this must be ongoing. And that's why I think it's important to work on this non-stop or all the time. And also thinking about what we need to do before refugee students arrive, what do we need to do when they are on their arrival and in the school. Also, it has to be holistic. So we cannot, for example, educate, teach them mathematics or the language or science if actually we don't teach if we don't take care of their physical well-being, psychological well-being, social well-being. So we really have to think about a holistic approach. It has to also be asset-based, because often when you read policies or some of the documentation, refugee students may be portrayed as issues and problems in the classroom. And I think we have to move away from that and actually understand that refugee students are gifts to our classrooms, and that they can contribute, and we can teach them, but we can also learn from them. And we need to, for teachers, it's actually about being very practical and build on their strengths rather than trying to fix some issues or and then we will talk about this a little bit later, that we do need patience, and we do need to understand the situation in more depth, not making quick decisions, not being judgmental, just understanding the complexity of the situation. And here, really, when we think about building on refugee student strengths, then we also can think about multimodal ways of teaching. For example, using the arts, in the teaching process, using technology, using drama, for example, and things like that. Also, we need to think about justice-focused education, where, it's about equity, and it doesn't, so it's really thinking about our biases and stereotypes and trying to actually understand how different justice and equity is from stereotyping and discrimination, because sometimes refugee students can encounter discrimination in the classroom by peers or even teachers or in the community. And they are, in some countries really, people are building a fear against refugees in general. So we need to be careful about that. And also, I just want to point out that schools cannot do it all. So we cannot ask from schools and teachers who have their curriculum to cover, who have sometimes big classrooms and want to do their best. We cannot ask from them alone to actually educate refugee students. We need to connect. So that education, it must be intersectoral, intercultural, national, and international. So connecting schools with settlement centers, connecting schools with the government, with the community, with students and their families. So we all need to understand our roles in the process of resettling and educating refugee students, including the academia in terms of researchers, teacher education programs, and so on. Some promising practices in Canada that, there are many practices that are promising, but I want today focus on two of them, and then share with you a little bit about an app that was brought to my attention last week. So I will share that with you, and it's up to you to consider if it might be helpful for you, or maybe build on that idea of having an app that actually might be helpful in schools, and maybe develop something on your own. It's really your choice. But we have two very interesting concepts. One is Swiss program, Settlement Workers in Schools program, that is funded by federal government, by the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. And it is actually partnerships of schools and service providers, such as settlement organization for newcomers and newcomer centers. And they support smooth transition of newcomers in their homes and in elementary and high schools. So it is for K-12 education, as we call that in Canada. On the other hand, we have bilingual language programs, what is really interesting. And in many Canadian urban schools, refugee children continue their education in their home language and English in dual language programs. For example, students in Calgary can study in Spanish and English, or Arabic and English in Edmonton. And many of the recently arrived Ukrainian refugees have received a warm welcome in Manitoba's 11 Ukrainian English schools. So these are really beautiful initiatives that are working well. And then a little bit about Level B, and there will be one more slide later, because I will kind of go deeper into those three promising practices after this slide. Level B offers the Ukrainian and English versions of the app for free for all Ukrainian refugee children and their teachers, with multiple language options for instructions. This app can help children learn math, English, and other languages. I was also told it's actually for the entire classroom for all children. Often the app is used also to educate children with learning challenges, for example. And so it can be adjusted and adapted. What is also interesting is that it has been used in different countries, like with Ukrainian refugee children, like Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia. Unfortunately, they don't have the app on Lithuanian language. But when I asked about the possibility. They say if people are interested, they would be able to develop such a version in 2 months. So something to think about, because, you know, we talk a lot about technology and its benefits. So, you know, let's try to explore them and see how they might work. And the app is really interactive, and it can be interesting and motivating for students. It is built to motivate students to learn more and to succeed. So in my collaboration with Mariam Karimi, who is working as a Swiss worker, connecting newcomers with Canadian communities, connecting schools and families. You know, what we should do before welcoming refugee students, how to welcome them at their arrival. So we need to learn. And I know that this is not a new concept for teachers, because we learn all the time, and that's our lifestyle, so to speak. But we need to learn culture, belief, and religion of our immigrant students or refugee students, language, not to speak it, but we need to know what language it is, history and background, reasons for immigration, pre-migration and migration school experiences, because sometimes there are actually gaps in education during migration. Sometimes students spend some time in refugee camps, and there is no education. So we need to be aware of all these challenges that might be present. Also, there are things that we need to provide. And when I'm saying we, I really think, and not only teachers, but schools, communities, governments, teachers should have helpers in classes, you know, teaching assistants who actually speak the language on newcomer students. And sometimes refugee teachers who come and immigrate together with refugee students might be actually the right people to do that, especially you know, if they speak the language of the host country, because they know what the students have been through. They understand, and it's also important. You know, one of the issue might be students' lack of trust, because they have been through, you know, sometimes violence, dangerous situations, loss, and all these kind of difficult situations. And it's hard to build trust in such a context and with such experiences. And then also, you know, having bilingual documentation. So signs and poster in corridors, in cafeteria, you know, that actually is translated to the language of the newcomers, especially, you know, when we want to connect with parents. All those documentation that is sent home should be bilingual, so the parents actually understand what it is about. And also it would be good to have translators to help develop partnerships between schools and parents and students' communities. You know, similar what you are doing today, you know, translating into 2 languages, so more people have access. And that's, again, equity and justice, that this kind of information is clear and available. And then some of the main challenges, and I'm sure there are more, but I guess this is a kind of a summary, that sometimes it's hard to communicate with students. If you don't know their language and they don't know your language, so how do you do that? So here we need patience, and also teachers should not assume that there is something wrong with cognitive development. And I know when I facilitated some workshops for teacher candidates in Canada, after one of the workshops, I had a student come to me and say, you know, I really want to help refugee students, but what can I do when they are cognitively undeveloped or behind? And I said, oh, please don't assume that. You know, this might not have anything with some delay in cognitive development. It might be connected to, you know, the language barrier, to trauma, to, you know, laws, trying to actually adjust to the new environment without support networks, without friends. So, you know, build a life from scratch. So, you know, let's not assume things, and be aware of other possibilities. Language barriers of the newcomer students and families, parents' involvement. So how do you include parents who don't speak the language of the host country? So again, having, you know, we will talk about it later, but, you know, kind of translating, making sure that some resources are available. Lack of useful resources in their schools. So not necessarily they are policies or guides or documents or curricula for teaching refugee students. Student misbehavior, classroom management, for example, anxiety, PTSD and other mental health issues, and lack of education. Because, you know, pre-migration, migration times, it's hard to actually enroll in schools and actually learn and focus on learning. So other best practices, you know, is kind of responding to those challenges, is working closely with the health service providers. And, you know, in Canada, we have schools and Swiss workers working with the health care providers, providing culturally responsive counseling, offering anti-racism and diversity training for schools, school staff, healthcare providers, and mainstream students. So actually, we all have a place in this process. Also providing funding for settlement services and schools. So the government must be involved in this, definitely. Offering projects and activities that are available for students for free, without charge. And, you know, those activities could be in the schools or in the communities, and it could the sports or the arts. Also, it is important to engage parents, and it could be done by bilingual documentation, by having translators available, by inviting parents to schools for maybe family school night or different assemblies. So organizing cultural gatherings, and you know, collaborating with other organizations like resettlement organizations, or everyone, all the stakeholders in the resettlement and education. Another actually thing to think about comes from actually more psychotherapy. Dr. Koo actually presented about supporting children and youth in crisis at the Swiss conference that was last month that was actually attended by Swiss workers, teachers, and school administrators. And it's really interesting. This is kind of more closer advice how to work with the children and youth in crisis, or with some emotional challenges or a trauma. So these are really practical advices for teachers. I'm not saying it is easy to do it, but it is something to think about and to do your best. So give them extra time and attention. And this might sound too ambitious or utopian, so to speak. If you have a class full of students, how can you give more attention to each of them, or only refugee students? But it is something that would work. Reassure them often that they are safe. So keep them close to their family. So this is also important, and especially in the process of resettlement and encountering a new culture. And then often children are in between, in a limbo between their culture and then the new host country culture. And sometimes this situation can turn them against their family values, and because they try to fit in and they try to acculturate, adapt to the new environment, to new friends, new values. But the important thing is actually to acknowledge their culture values and the host culture values, rather than judging which is better or more important or more intelligent, more logical. Allow them to stay close to you, as a teacher or a school administrator. That's very important, because they cut loose most of their connections and networks and relationships. So it's important for them to build new relationships. And it's without belonging, there is no well-being, and without belonging and well-being, there is no learning and teaching, there is no education. So we need to be aware of that. And it is important to set clear rules and expectations, and be consistent. So those rules and expectations really help, this kind of structure really help every student, not only refugee students, to actually be aware and learn what is expected, what they have to do. And it's good if it doesn't change too often, if it doesn't confuse them. Regular routines and schedules are also helpful, because there have been so many changes and movements, uncertainties. So having regular routines and schedules can be really good, to calm students down, to feel that they are safe, they know what's coming up, they know what their expectations are, what their day would look like. Be patient with children who are misbehaving. So this is something that it's really hard, because you might think, teachers might think that first of all, it is your role and job to teach students not only math and science, but also, how to behave in the classroom. You don't want anyone to actually create classroom management issues, so other students cannot learn. So it's really getting too hard to manage. But it's really important to figure out why this misbehaving is happening. And, this might be done one-on-one with the student. Again, if we need a translator, we need to and if we do have those resources that are critical, that would be ideal. And also sometimes teachers might need to talk to the families, to parents, to actually understand what's going on. I know that sometimes using the artwork would be helpful to, like story sharing, and that story sharing doesn't have to be necessary oral or written. It could be drawing, or it could be performance, and so on. So that might be really helpful to understand how students feel. And also, I think what is important to do is include their culture in terms of maybe literature or the arts in the classroom, in the curriculum, so they can recognize, themselves. They can see themselves in the curriculum, in the classroom, in the educational process. Because if they came after, leaving their country, leaving their cousins, relatives, their schools, their friends, it is important to remind them that their culture is important, that their culture has a value, that we all can learn from their culture and celebrate that. Provide opportunities for playing and relaxing in a safe environment. So this is really important, that especially for younger children, that they can actually do multimodal learning, not only lessons or reading and writing. Safe environment really is important. So in the classroom, you might have your special background rules, or your special acts of kindness list, or things like that, just to remind everyone, about being kind, about being supportive, about being a friend. So everyone kind of understands maybe what kind of language can be used and what kind of language should never be used, things like that. Also, providing spaces for collaboration or group learning is important. Of course, we would need overseeing these groups and making sure that everything is working out well, that children are working well together. And often there are important roles of refugee students themselves in mentoring other refugee students who maybe come after them, or maybe they come at the same time. Because that's also, giving them agency. And we will talk about that later as well, very soon, actually. Allow them to be sad or feel confused. Don't expect them to be tough. So this is also an idea, like we cannot force, and I think it would be really cruel to force refugee students to be happy. And after everything they went through, But that's why, trying them to feel safe, it's kind of more appropriate than to be happy, because they are dealing with a lot and still trying to find their place. Listen to their thoughts and fears without judgment. And this is something that is really important, because if they share their thoughts, they know that they won't be judged. They can share them safely, and they will be supported, and they will be understood. And sometimes, we might, even if they have questions if they are questioning something when they're sharing their thoughts, maybe we can ask them questions back. If they're saying, I don't know how to accomplish this, I don't know how to focus on learning, you might say, okay, so what do you think? What would you need to focus on learning? Is there anything that you are missing? Is there anything that you need that we can provide? And things like that. Support them and discuss how to stay safe. So this is idea that you are present, or as often as possible. You check in. You reconnect. At least once a day, to see if everything is well, and make sure that students are safe. And this one is really the last one here, not actually the last probably, but one of this slide. Give them a sense of agency, encourage them to help other students. So it's really moving again away from that deficit approach to educating refugee students, and thinking about an asset-based approach. What are their gifts? What do they can contribute to the classroom, to the learning process, to their education and education of their classmates? So those are very important things. And it's not really only among children, it's among every refugees or immigrants or people coming into a new environment for different reasons. This need for agency, for contributing to the host country, to the new environment, to actually acknowledge their roles as valued citizens and learners in this case. And again, for me, I really think that whenever we are in an educational setting, we are co-learners. And I know that there is this distinction between pedagogy and andragogy. And this idea that andragogy is more, adults are more self-guided, more independent, they have more to offer in the learning process. But I do believe that doesn't matter if it's pedagogy or andragogy, if we are working with children or youth or adults, that actually we are co-learners. We learn from each other all the time. And I always value that. And I think it is important to acknowledge all those different contributions. This is the slide that I received from Eva from Level B. And I asked her, so let me know how will teachers benefit, and how will students benefit? Why should we use Level B? And then also she provided her contact information. So if interested, you can connect with her. So what she was saying is, for teachers, positive activity breaking the language barrier, exercises customized to the pupil's needs, clear overview of pupil's knowledge, connecting pupils in the learning process, tool for filling knowledge gaps in the classroom. And again, it's not only for the refugee students, but it could be actually used for all the students in the classroom. And one thing that I would also like to highlight, all these strategies that we just talked about, they are not helpful only for refugee students. They are helpful for all students, because in our classrooms, we might have students with trauma. We might have students who are not refugees, but they experience violence or domestic violence or other issues. In Canada, the classroom is really diverse. So, for example, we have racialized students, we have Indigenous students, we have students with learning challenges. So this really can help diverse students group. And Eva says that for students, it's fun and motivational learning, connecting with the whole class, inclusive profile for every pupil, bonding activity with teacher and classmates. So I think those are all very interesting advantages and benefits to be considered. And I just shared this with you as an opportunity if you're interested in. And I would like to close the presentation with some final thoughts in terms of the presentation. But of course, then I'm happy to answer your questions. There is no one universal approach to educating refugee students. We cannot say, okay, this is it, and this is the only way to do it. Because really depends on the context, depends on the students, the teacher, the resources. But asset-based approach should be part of it, holistic education, using technology, using the art, all those things can help. And definitely interconnecting, across schools, sectors, nations, and the world. Educators are some of the first professionals whom refugee families will meet, connecting people who are available and ready to offer support in times of crisis and times of healing. So this is another thing to be aware of. Teachers are powerful people, and we must be aware how deeply we influence our students. And this influence might be even deeper and life-defining when we work with refugee students. And when they come into our classrooms, we must be aware that they need some time for learning, but definitely some time for healing from all these difficult experiences. Caring and safe schools, policies, and programs are vehicles of well-being, belonging, academic success, and coexistence. And this coexistence, it actually comes from indigenous creation stories and the Turo Wampum Belt story. And coexistence means living in friendship, respect, and peace. So I hope the world will be able to live in friendships, respect, and peace. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for your presentation. And before we will open the discussion,
Okay.
I have one question for you. What is
Yes.
your opinion about cultural shock? Because I'm talking about double side of it, one, it is for the refugees, which is like for sure what we are facing in the schools, and other also it is for communities who are receiving refugees. So maybe you could tell it more about this topic.
Yes. In terms of cultural shock, I know that they are, again, depending on how different the cultures are and how different the values are. And definitely it can impact the refugee students and refugee receiving communities. I do think that for me, and many people would disagree with me, but I think that culture shock may be overrated, and because it really emphasizes the difference rather than similarities, and humanity that we share. And there are also, there are also this idea of fear against newcomers, and some of those emotions of fear, they are based on maybe negative personal experiences or maybe historical experiences. At the same time, I think we have to start somewhere to focus on what unites us rather than what distinguishes us. And yeah, I think we need to give people some time to adjust, and definitely not only refugee students, but also receiving communities and schools, and sometimes people call that mainstream students, or it takes time, but making sure that they work, teach, and learn in a safe environment is helpful.
Okay, so maybe anybody from the audience have a question? No. Okay. So I have a question, one more for you.
Okay.
You arrived to Canada as a teacher, and I think this refugee crisis is pretty different from others because we have a lot of children, we have a lot of women, and we also receiving a lot of teachers. And here it is a question of how, from your personal experience, how it's possible to help also for them to find their new space in new schools with the new rules, with the everything different. Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about this topic?
I will. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. And actually my doctoral work was on excuse me. My doctoral work was on exploring experiences of refugee students, of refugee teachers from the former Yugoslavia. And this idea again, that the pedagogy, the space, teaching, learning is so different. I think it is different, but again, there are similarities. And as I already said, teachers are lifelong learners, and they are educated people. And I know when I came to Canada as a science teacher, my degree wasn't recognized. And even when I was asked, what did you do back home? And I said, I am a science teacher. I was said, no, you used to be a science teacher. And I said, no, I am a science teacher. And this person is now trying to explain to me that in English, it is, you used to be because you are not anymore. And I said, no, I know what you are saying, but I am a science teacher. If I'm not practicing science teaching, for me, that's another thing. But in Yugoslavia, you get your degree and that's, what your profession. And, again, that's a country that doesn't exist anymore. So, I do have some experience similar to those that are, other refugees. So, excuse me. Yeah. And one thing that there was a great example of, I've learned that all of the teachers who came here, they had to continue their education. They weren't accepted to teach in the classroom. They really had to go and maybe go to the teachers' college, or some of them tried to do, they were some who were teaching English back home, and then they went to some training programs to teach English. Some of them ended up, instead of teaching mathematics, working in pre-service, preschool, kindergartens. But one thing is that they should be guided to understand how they can actually make their credentials recognized. They need to be mentored. They need to be invited, and they can be invited to schools in different capacities. There was an interesting example in Quebec, where one of my participants actually was a French language teacher in Yugoslavia, and she just came to the school and started talking to the principal and started helping with the students during the recess time or the lunch time. And that was the way how she kind of get to know people, started networking, learned ways to go to get additional education. And now she teaches French language to newcomers to Canada. So I guess, first of all, recognizing those people's degrees and work experiences, acknowledging them, of course, letting them know what the differences are and what they need to do to actually learn and, to do some professional development, and think about different ways they can contribute, and learn from them. Also learn from them how to work with the refugee students and learn from their pedagogies, because we are into learning about being open-minded, learning from different perspectives, becoming more creative and innovative. So again, going away from that deficit approach and thinking about what are the strengths of refugee teachers who are coming, thinking about their resilience and refugee students' resilience as well. So that's one of the strengths that we also can build on, resilience and, and definitely, I believe, love for learning.
Thank you very much. Maybe we have anybody from audience who would like to ask. We have very good listeners today. So I will ask you maybe the last question. Maybe you could also share some ideas, some thoughts, first of all, about from what kind of programs they are learning in Canada. Are they Canadian, or they also studying in their own programs? Because in Lithuania, we have the situation that partly Ukrainians, they are studying also in their own Ukrainian language, online courses and all the programs. And some of them are studying in Lithuanian schools. So maybe you can, what is the situation in Canada in this way? Do they have opportunity to study in?
Are you, sorry, are you talking about students or teachers?
Students.
Okay. So they are not separate schools for refugees. they are like, this is something that I love about the Canadian education system. They come into regular classes and learn in the regular classes. Sometimes they do have extra classes to learn English, but they do learn in regular classes, because having dual schools, having a dual school system can be actually dangerous and not equitable, because the curriculum may be different. Maybe teachers' credentials or capacities are different. I don't know. The idea is also, what is the purpose of education? So are they learning how to succeed in Lithuania and live, and succeed and contribute? And if they are disconnected from Lithuanian language and from Lithuanian culture in a separate school, that's not helpful. Like they will be they might be experiencing second second citizenship status, that they are not actually they are not belonging in this country, and they won't learn enough to actually succeed. So this dual school system has been critiqued, that might have and again, every system has positives and negatives, because there are benefits to learning in your own language and being having maybe the curriculum that is so relevant to you in terms of your heritage. But I think the best way is actually regular classrooms. And then I think it's a really great idea of this bilingual heritage language programs that we have in Canada. That's something special. That's not everywhere. That's I guess really an interesting idea and practice that you actually and it's also there are different ways of actually, it's just bilingual school. So you are at the same time learning two languages and probably two cultures, because curriculum is relevant to both the languages, or important in terms of both languages and cultures. So I think that would be the best way to go about, if possible. And I do know that sometimes there are funding issues and time issues, but it is something that is working in Canada. So it is a promising practice. And, I'm cautious when I say, when I use the word best practices, because really it depends on the context. But, promising practices is maybe better. Evidence-based practices is maybe the best. So, I think I'm grateful for this webinar, because we have to start learning from each other, and so my question to you would be, if you don't mind, Andrews,
Sure.
How do you think that this dual system works in Lithuania? And, what are the benefits of the dual system?
I believe we have different systems, because we have, as far as I know, 3 systems. So in one system, refugees are coming like in small groups to the class, so they are 1 or 2 persons per class. Then it is bigger groups that they are staying. I know also it is that some of the students, they are in Polish or Russian schools, because we have some little bit different schools also. And that this decision was made because languages, Ukrainian and Russian, much more closer, in one opinion. And then we also have students who are studying or at home, or they are going to the schools and they are connecting to Ukrainian schools, online schools. So my personal opinion, it should be very challenging, first of all, because for children, I can believe and I can understand that they are waiting for the end of the war and they want to go home. It's like it could be very nice in different places, but home is home. But still, in any way, at the moment, they are in different countries and their life could be much more easy if they will get in touch with the locals. And for this, I believe much more better it is when they are staying in local schools. So this is my personal opinion. I cannot say which is like the best method, but still.
I see. Yeah. We don't have online schools for refugee students here. Like we just had to move to online during the pandemic, but
Yeah.
there are no online schools, so to speak. No, they come to regular classes. There is another thing that people are trying to actually keep their cultures and language, and they organize Sunday schools in particular language. It could be Ukrainian or Chinese or Spanish. And those schools also are funded by the government, but people have to apply, with plan and program and curricula. And then, some of actually, so yeah, they go to regular schools and then, there are options to actually still keep their language and keep learning. This idea of temporarity, the children are here just for the time being and they will go back home, and I'm sure that's motivating for them, like for all of us waiting to the war to stop and then people live in peace and prosperity again. But at the same time, we don't know how long it will last, and we cannot just delete this time. Like they still have to keep learning, and they would survive otherwise too, but there are many challenges with disrupted education as well, and it can happen easily. And I know that many issues like that were experienced in Turkey and Greece and in the Balkans, because many refugees are kind of just traveling through the Balkans to Western Europe. And but still, those governments there, they are including refugee students in their regular classes, or sometimes they do have special centers, as you have for Ukrainian students, because I think continuing education rather than interrupting it would be a good way to go, if possible.
I believe education is very important, especially as we are getting AI, developing so fast and developing everything. So we have also to learn ourselves, to teach our students, kids. And so I really would like to thank you very much. I hope we will keep in touch. We'll have other opportunities to meet, to discuss.
I hope so. I hope so. And I will tell this right now. I shared my presentation with you, and there is my contact information, my email. So feel free to contact me. Let's keep in touch. Let me know if we can, work on a project or do something together. We have to start connecting. It's not just a Lithuanian challenge or Canadian challenge. It's really important that we as educators, that we are connected and informed and educated, and that we are in action, so to speak.
Okay. And thank you for all participants who stayed with us. Thanks very much for Diana, for interpreter who was translating today to Lithuanian language. And let's meet during next meetings.
Yes, looking forward to it. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.